These are Nebraska corn farmers. They work in acres, not hours, harvesting the energy and climate solutions the world needs. We are proud to stand with you.
The success of tomorrow's soy industry depends on the actions we take today. The future is here, and the time to move is now.
Market Journal Television for Agricultural Business Decisions is a presentation of the University of Nebraska-Lincoln's Institute of Agriculture and Natural Resources in partnership with the Nebraska Rural Radio Association. Promotional support provided by the Nebraska Farmer Magazine and partial funding provided by the Nebraska Soybean Board and the Nebraska Corn Board.
Well, hi everyone, I'm Bryce Duskett, and thank you very much for joining us today here on Market Journal. You can see it behind me. In fact, you can hear it on the audio right now. We are joining you from Husker Harvest Days, taking place this week near Grand Island. From new technology to farm policy and livestock innovation, folks, if it's ag related, you bet you'll find it out here at the big show. Coming up on this week's broadcast of Market Journal, we'll be catching up with Charles Barrett. He is the co-founder of a company called Farmers Business Network. We discussed a multitude of topics, including financing options during an increasingly high interest rate environment. Plus, DTN's Todd Hultman is joining us to do a deep dive into all things impacting the grain markets. Plus, he has a special announcement for us that he'll share as part of our conversation. All of that and more is straight away here on the broadcast, but let's begin here. As we reach the finish line of the growing season with the start of harvest happening for some and inside for others, scouting for disease should still hold a high priority. Being aware of any potential threat diseases may pose to your fields will help you set up best to make informed decisions leading into the planting season coming up this spring. During the first day of Husker Harvest Days, our team caught up with the extension educator in this area, that's Amy Timmerman, to find out what corn producers in particular should be keeping an eye on as they look out, as I mentioned, harvest nearing.
So as we go into September, I know the tendency is that we're done scouting our cornfields, but in all reality, we need to still be out there scouting. We still have foliar diseases developing out there, and it's important for us to know what we have because that's going to help us make management decisions for the 2025 growing season. And some of the big things that we're seeing right now is we're still seeing tar spot development. Remember, tar spot is fairly new to the state. In some parts of the state, especially on probably the western 2/3 of the state, it is a new disease for you guys. So as we look at the distribution of tar spot, primarily we've seen it in the eastern third of Nebraska, but there's a lot of counties with corn production where we're still finding it for the first time. And finding it later in the season is very common. When we look at the symptomology of tar spot, yes, it starts out as tiny black specks, but we have to be really sure that's really what we're looking at because it can be confused with other diseases. In the photos that we have here, as tar spot develops, it becomes a larger, blotchier lesion, which is a lot easier to identify. So I mentioned earlier that those tiny black specks can be easily misidentified. There are two other fungal diseases that we're seeing right now that can give us the same symptomology. One of those is southern rust. Southern rust has been running rampant in the state since the middle of July, and we're still seeing new developments of southern rust. But as southern rust continues to develop, it's starting to produce a different spore type called the Telia spore, which is the overwintering spore, which is also black in coloration, which makes it difficult to identify, do I have initial tar spot or do I have the Telia spore of southern rust? One thing we can look at when we're looking at southern rust and that distribution, remember southern rust likes to be smaller pustules, more highly concentrated in an area of the leaf. If you're seeing more of that and you're seeing the brown pustule or the more red pustules, it may be tar spot. The final fungal pathogen that we're running into as we're getting into September and October is just the saprophytic fungi. These are the fungi that are moving in on that dead organic matter. They're going to help break it down, which is great for that overall decomposition of the plant, but can make it easy to misidentify. So how do we really identify these three diseases? The easiest way is to be able to throw them underneath the microscope. So reaching out to the Plant Pest Diagnostic Clinic, reaching out to Dr. Tamara Jackson-Zims, or your local extension educator to get a positive identification is key. Why does that become important for us? As we look at the 2025 growing season, and if you're going back into corn, I identified tar spot for the first time. That may make a difference in the varietal selections that you do for 2025. It's also going to put you on a higher of alert to be looking for that disease development in 2025 earlier on. So if we run into a situation we need to do a fungicide application, we're able to do that at the right time. Now, if we have southern rust is not able to overwinter here. So that's going to be a disease that's going to be blown in again. But we can also look at maybe we want to do some varietal selections if there's those options for 2025 because we got hit pretty hard, or different management options we may want to do for those fungal diseases. So knowing what I have for diseases in 24, even in late season, is going to impact what my management decisions are for the 2025 growing season.
Thanks to Amy for that in-the-field update. We sure appreciate that. Well, out here at Husker Harvest Days, there was a big announcement made by the folks from the Nebraska Farm Bureau. So joining us now to share what that announcement was is Mark McHargue, president of the Nebraska Farm Bureau. Good to see you.
Good to see you. Always good to be out here at Husker Harvest Days, and always fun to see what's new.
Absolutely. Well, the announcement from you all this year has to do with health insurance. I know this has become a top priority for members of the Farm and Ranch Group, the state's largest farm and ranch group. What is that announcement you all made?
Yeah, the announcement we made this morning is that Nebraska Farm Bureau has developed a new set of health plans to help cover the cost of health care. And so we've surveyed our members over the number of years, and we found out that really one of the top of the mind topics is just the cost of health care. And so we are a solutions-oriented entity, and so it's like we need to come up with a solution, and we found a good partner. Tennessee Farm Bureau has been offering health plans back to the 40s, and we're partnering with them, and they partner with other groups like South Dakota Farm Bureau and North Kansas Farm Bureau, and so we had to pass some legislation to get there, but that happened, and so we're going to roll out this plan. Significant savings for those that are kind of in the individual market.
I want to go back for just a second. It was a few years ago, the Farm Bureau, you all had a similar announcement. You were rolling something out. What happened there, and what did you learn as you rolled this new product out, this health care plan?
Yeah, good memory. And so a number of years ago, we were putting together just a large group to still fit under the federal exchange. We just functioned as a group. Well, we ended up, instead of a price limit, I don't know, $70,000 you can make, we raised that all the way up to like $140,000, $50,000. You could still get some subsidies for that plan. And so that kind of took us out of the market. And really that was just a piece of legislation that took us out. This is very different. It's actually a separate plan. It's underwritten, so you go through a process. But that's what's going to allow us to save anywhere from 30 to 50% on health coverage costs.
What will this plan cover? What kind of services?
You know, really, it's going to function like almost any other health insurance product. The main thing is that we'll be underwriting. So if you have maybe you have a significant heart issue or something, we won't maybe cover that, or maybe there'll be a waiting period. And so that's what kind of makes this all work. History would say that still almost 9 out of 10 applicants actually are going to be able to go through onto this product. And the great thing is that here in the country, we still have our federal exchange. And so if you don't qualify, there's good options for those high risk folks in Nebraska still.
October 1st, you could be accepting applications for this. Who can apply to be part of the plan?
Yeah, anybody can apply. They just have to have Farm Bureau membership. They can go to any local Farm Bureau agency. They can go into our website, Nebraska Farm Bureau, and find a spot. And so the application will be simple, but there will be a process to it. We will be rolling the actual plans, putting into action January 1st. And it's not for just farmers and ranchers. I think that's the important thing. All you have to have is a Farm Bureau membership for $50-some. That'll qualify you. I think it's really going to work well for small businesses. I have a small construction company that I run with my son. We're going to look into offering that for our employees, because we're not big enough to have a group plan, but know that health insurance, health products are really important to cover the risk for our families.
So we wrap this up, going back to kind of how you started this. This was a top concern expressed by members of the Nebraska Farm Bureau. You all making things work behind the scenes, I suppose, to make it all possible. Just talk about meeting the needs of members today.
Yeah, there's just a lot of things that we're involved in Nebraska Farm Bureau, but what we're really sensitive is what's the top needs. So when we actually look at the farm economy coming up over the next couple of years, I think budgets are certainly going to get tight. I think this will be one of those things that from a household budget, if we can cut multiple thousands of dollars off of their health product premiums, I think that'll be beneficial. I think now's a great time because there is going to be a squeeze in the sector, and this is the type of product that can actually lower costs opposed to almost everything else in our life that seems to be going up.
You're looking at savings up to 30+%. Reiterate
Yeah,
that
30
point.
Up to almost 50%.
Wow.
So some numbers that we looked at, maybe up to $6,000 a family.
Make a big difference. Mark, appreciate you joining us out here at the show to share the update. We appreciate it.
Absolutely, anytime.
Again, for more information about that new health benefits plan, you can visit nefb.org. Again, appreciate Mark joining us here at Husker Harvest Days. We go from one set to another. We bounced over here to DTN as we prepare to talk all things markets with DTN analyst. That is Todd Hultman. Good to see you, sir.
Hey, Bryce. Nice to see you, and always good to be back in Grand Island.
You mentioned this as we were talking. There's always kind of a theme around farm shows, and it's often talking about the low in the market. Doesn't make for a lot of optimism as people kick the tires on new equipment, does it?
No, I get to have these face-to-face interactions with farmers at probably the worst time of the year in terms of prices. We're always near the harvest lows. It's true again this year, but it's been one of the tougher summers we've seen for prices in a long time.
I always like to try to set the stage for our viewers of the factors that are influencing the market right now and where things might be going. We look at over the summer, what was kind of maybe 2 or 3 of the biggest reasons why the markets are currently where they're trading?
Yeah, factor number one, we've had very good weather over most growing areas throughout the Corn Belt. I think there's no argument about that. We've got some of the best soil moisture profiles across the Midwest we've seen in at least 4 years, maybe a little longer. I still have a little bit of reticence on the production estimate because we had such severe weather earlier in the year. We've talked to guys here that have been hit by hail. We had flooding up in South Dakota where I am that stretched over into Minnesota. So we do have pockets of damage, but overall, you can't deny it's a good crop this year.
How does the demand picture look? We continue to talk about that. People optimistic prices will go up. We'll point to that. Is it improving over the past month or so?
Yeah, when you see prices this low, one thing you want to see is a good demand response, and we're really seeing that. In corn, export sales are up significantly from a year ago. Our new crop sales are off to a good start. The ethanol margins are very good right now. If you can't make money with prices under $4 on corn, something's wrong there. Similarly, on soybeans, the crush margins, the domestic demand side, very strong. That continues to hold up very well. And we just have the one possible negative in soybeans is the possibility of record crop coming from Brazil following our U.S. here at home. So that's the one thing hanging over those export sales a bit.
Something I've heard a lot of analysts talk about is what's going to happen with the U.S. election, of course, and China comes into play there. We've seen them return to the marketplace, particularly for soybeans.
Yeah, well, it's that time of year. Just in the past month, we've seen a big swing in the soybean price difference between us and Brazil. We're now about 95 cents a bushel cheaper on the November contracts for soybean prices. So we've seen a nice pickup in our soybean export sales for the new season just the past few weeks. We've seen that come into play, and we should have a good window of opportunity here that continues until Brazil's crop starts to get harvested in late January.
What's the phrase? The cure for low prices is low prices?
Yes, and often I've hated that, but there definitely is some truth to it. And I would also say the cure for low prices is just some normal volatility. Even in bearish surplus years like we have, prices just don't go down and sit there. There's all sorts of factors, and as we move from season to season, our focus changes. So when we get out of this harvest period, we get corn and soybeans stored away and start to look a little and give more appreciation to these demand factors. I think we'll have some better price opportunities.
What's your gut tell you? I guess you're kind of alluding to it, but do you think the low is in the rearview mirror at this point for corn and soybeans?
For corn, yes. I do think the August lows are in, is my best guess there. On soybeans, we could test that August low again, maybe even dip below it a little bit. But I definitely think we are very close to long-term support on both prices.
We're talking about South America. Remind me of the timeline of some of the things as the traders will look at it. When do they begin to really put a focus on what's going to happen there?
Sure. So Argentina farmers are starting to plant their corn right now, and it's probably going to be a smaller crop this year because they have leaf hopper problems. They had damage last year, and it looks like that infestation has spread even larger this year. So we've talked to some Argentine farmers recently, and they think their corn acres are going to be down this year. In Brazil, where the big competition comes from, they typically get their soybeans planted about late September, but they've got to wait for that rainy season to come in. They're coming off of a very dry several-month period. They're in extreme drought right now. A lot of their rivers are suffering low water level problems. So they really need the new rainy season to show up. And so far, that's not in the forecast. So we may have a little excitement there this fall.
USDA report coming out on Thursday. It's tricky with our timing of our recording right now, but you pointed something out to me about USDA being in the field surveying, get some real data of what's happening. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, this is the first time they're going to actually obtain yield data from the fields as they normally do, but it's September when they come up with that. So they will add that to the mix and also to their production surveys and other information that they take in to make their estimates. I would like to point out that the August and September USDA reports don't have a very good history of making production estimates yet, but when you get to the month of October, then that has a history of a much stronger production estimate, and we'll have to have a little more respect for that one.
Well, congratulations are in order for you. I'm sure a lot of people have been coming up to you at Farm Progress, now Husker Harvest Days, because you announced your retirement last month. You're still here lending some help for DTN.
I did.
Congratulations, though, on that
Well,
decision.
thank you, Bryce. I appreciate that. I am retiring. I'm not dying. I will still find plenty of things to do, but my time here is almost to an end.
This might be the final time we talk here on Market Journal. You've been very generous with your time over many years, so on behalf of our entire team, thanks for what you're doing and for spreading the message of what's happening and try to shed a light on the truth behind the markets.
Well, thank you for a fantastic show and serving the folks in Nebraska, which near and dear to my heart. This is my home state.
Up next, college students interested in coming back to the farm or ranch or entering the ag job market after graduation may be wondering which ag majors are most popular and have the best track record when it comes to employment after college. With an industry that's ever evolving constantly, the Nebraska Farmer interviewed several major Midwest ag colleges and came up with a top 5 led by animal science and veterinary science, ag business, and crop science. You can get all the details of this study and some of their interviews they conducted in the September issue of the Nebraska Farmer. Funny, ag communications didn't make the top 5. Well, it is now time for weather, another area that didn't make the top 5 with Eric Hunt. Eric, we're sad you couldn't join us out here at Husker Harvest Days, but since we're at the show this week, curious, what are you seeing down the road as producers are gearing up for harvest?
Well, thanks, Bryce. It looks like we're going to stay relatively warm for at least the first half of this next week. CPC is favoring above average temperatures through this period. But there are some changes coming, particularly in the form of some precipitation. Again, this would be very, very useful for precipitation for a lot of this region because we've been pretty dry back half of August and start off of September. The reason we may be looking at some chances for decent precipitation is it looks like we are seeing increasing signals in the model for a deeper trough to get in the southwestern U.S. and some cyclogenesis off the Rocky Mountains. And there may even be an opportunity for a couple of different ways. One was to move over western Nebraska Wednesday night into Thursday, and another one moving a little bit further east on Thursday into Friday. Now, again, I'm filming this on Monday, so things may change a good bit between now and the end of the week. But right now, there is a pretty good chance for a good portion of the state and a lot of the region to pick up more than 1 inch of rain by this next week. Again, this would be very, very welcome rain just given the recent dryness. We also may be seeing some much cooler temperatures by the back end of the next week. So again, if this low ends up cutting off to our northeast, we would be under cooler northwest flow. So late next week might be relatively raw and kind of cool. So that football game next Friday might be a little on the chilly side. So just plan accordingly. But the reason this rainfall is so important is we actually have been seeing things go downhill a lot in the drought monitors I've been showing you. And the latest drought outlook, which was released at the end of August, shows a pretty good chance of seeing drought expand further north and eastward into more of the central Great Plains and Western Corn Belt. So that precipitation late next week is going to be absolutely vital in helping prevent some of this from actually coming to fruition, because without that, I can pretty much guarantee you that this will come true by sometime in October without that rain next week. In terms of October precipitation, again, the European model is favoring pretty much dry across the entire eastern portion of the country. Less signal across the Great Plains region, but again, they're not showing wet either. Temperatures are expected to be above average pretty much nationwide, including most Nebraska. Some of this may be a bit overdone, but again, I'm not seeing any significant sign for cool weather. And one of the reasons for this drier, warmer trend in the fall is we do tend to be that way in La Nina. We are basically almost in La Nina just based on the increased easterly trade winds, upwelling, cooler sea surface temperatures here across the central equatorial Pacific. That tends to kind of keep the jet stream back toward the west and a little bit weaker as we head into the fall season. If we look at composites, from years I would call analogs, which are not saying these are perfect, but in terms of years that may be useful, 1999, 2010, 16, 2020, and 2021, we have tended to see a lot of ridging across the western and central U.S. That has tended to favor it being relatively dry across a good portion of Nebraska. Again, particularly southern Nebraska, we tend to be quite a bit below average during the month of October for precipitation. We also tend to be fairly warm. Now, the real warmth tends to be a bit further east and west of us, but again, we are not seeing a cool signal. So warm and dry in October would favor, at least the potential for additional drought degradation as we move into deeper into the fall. And again, if we get deeper into October and into November without really having any decent precipitation, we've kind of missed out on that secondary period of potential recharge. And that means that the probability of us actually eliminating drought in the winter gets, slimmer and slimmer, particularly the farther west you go in the state. In terms of temperatures and precipitation for the month of August, we range from 92.4 for an average high temperature in Chadron, 80.8 in Albion. Coolest minimum temperatures were in Bushnell, warmest in Valley. Most precipitation was Chalco, which is northern part of Sarpy County, and lowest less than ½ inch in McPherson County. Thanks, and back to you, Bryce.
All right, thank you very much for that update, Eric. We always appreciate it. Out next, we are back here at Husker Harvest Days getting an update with the folks at Farmers Business Network now. The co-founder of the company, Charles Barron, is joining us, and you have Nebraska roots. This is kind of a homecoming show for you.
It is. I got into farming because my wife is from Nebraska. She's from Kearney. That's how I learned everything, was through her family. Brother-in-law farms in Arapahoe, in that area. So it's always fun to be back here with so many of our members who've been around since the beginning of FBN.
Your story, your path to where you're at today is kind of an interesting one, involves some high levels of education. I'm curious, why did you choose the agriculture sector? We'll talk about FBN in a second, but curious about that path.
Well, I got into farming, as I said, through my family and through my brother-in-law, really. I spent a corn harvest working with him when I was working in the technology world, and I was chasing my girlfriend around in Nebraska. And I couldn't believe how complicated the job was. And you get up in the morning, you're doing cattle, you're fixing equipment, you're fixing pipe, then you're marketing, then you're going back to harvesting, then you're going back to dealing with business issues, and then you got weather alerts on the radio said rain in Brazil, beans are down a point. I'm like, what in the world does Brazil have to do with Nebraska? And you're in this global system, you're on your own, you're managing all these complex tasks, and you don't have this infrastructure of support around you. And so that was really the genesis of, for me in agriculture and wanting to work on this problem of, producer profitability and power in the market, because there you are on your own, companies on either side of you, much bigger, much more power, much more information than you. So by connecting farmers together online, tens of thousands of farms now in a network around the US and Canada, we can give producers more power, more information, and better profitability.
What are some of the ways you're doing so? What are the different entities involved with Farmers Business Network?
Well, it started as a data sharing platform, and now we've made it a free membership, so you don't have to participate in the data side. That's all there for growers who want to do that. The biggest things we do is we're now one of the largest providers, or the largest provider of crop protection online. You can work with a local rep, or you can do it all online. We provide a full-service livestock service with animal health, pharmaceuticals, and feed. We're a major lender to the farm, so a digital lending platform where you can work with a loan advisor, land input operating loans. We provide sustainability premiums in marketing, our analytics and AI system to help farmers make better decisions.
Let's talk about AI. You released your own AI product. You call it Norm. So what can Norm do?
We've named it Norm after Norman Borlaug. Norm can do just about anything. You can ask it about machinery, you can ask it about markets, you can ask it about inputs, but we specifically trained it on chemical. So it is trained on thousands of chemical labels. You can ask it about any product, compatible products, tank mixing, application rates, plant back periods, any agronomic question around pests or chemical. Norm has been trained on to assist farmers in making agronomic decisions.
Something else you've done for quite a few years is trying to provide transparency to the marketplace that farmers are dealing with, and you continue to find wild discrepancies when it comes to price. Tell me about that study and what you found.
We just released a major study, the 2024 FBN Price Transparency Report. We analyzed chemical prices this year. We saw up to a 470% price difference in chemical, which means two farmers are paying, one's paying nearly 4.5 times the other for the same product. That exists because pricing is basically hidden in chemical. We're the major provider who creates national price, visible, transparent price when we provide inputs to growers. So we recommend all farmers, participate in the FBN pricing system. You share an invoice, then you get to see what other growers are paying. It's all anonymized. We don't sell data. We don't transfer data. You can see what FBN or what other growers in the network, what ranges they're getting. And then it always shows you what the FBN price, maybe that's better or worse than the national average, but you get to see that in a very open and transparent way. And we found typical savings between branded to generic products was over 30%. And the typical savings when someone had an FBN comparable product versus whatever they bought was 15%. So there's tremendous savings out there. And when people are looking at every dollar right now because of low corn prices, sharpen your pencil, do your homework, and then participate in the FBN system, because whether it's seed or chemical pricing, you can save a lot of money on inputs this year. Making sure your farm's profitable, that's local business number one. And then number two, we have hundreds of our team members that we have invested literally hundreds of millions of dollars over the years through our teams, our infrastructure, our warehouses, our delivery, our community builder partners. So we're as local as anybody in ag at this point, and really proud of what we built over those years.
Thanks so much to Charles and his team for being so accommodating for us out here at the show. Now, if you'd like to learn more about Farmers Business Network, you can find them by searching for them, of course, in a search browser, or the direct link is fbn.com. They say farmers will do just about anything for a free hat. A lot of farmers and free hats, both of them out here at the 2024 version of Husker Harvest Days. If you keep hearing a bell being rung, it's because off to my left right now, they're doing a game called High Strike. See who can take a sledgehammer and ring the bell. We'll have more on the company hosting that competition coming up in the following weeks on Market Journal. That is going to do it for this week's broadcast. If you missed one of our stories, be sure you're following our team on social media, where we invite you to join in on the conversation. We hope to see you next time right here on the show. But until then, I'm Bryce Duskett, wishing you a safe and productive week.
Join Market Journal online at marketjournal.unl.edu. You can also follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Promotional support is provided by the Nebraska Farmer Magazine. Market Journal is produced by the University of Nebraska-Lincoln's Institute of Agriculture and Natural Resources.